It's networks us all across Canada though. You know, for our tiny little organization, we need ideas and that kind of work. It's an amazing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to, I call this November 5th, 2024, regular meeting of the City of Powell River Committee of the Whole to order. We start today by acknowledging we're holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Klamath Nation, who have stewarded this land for thousands of years. The mayor will not be joining us today. He's still recovering from his recent surgery, and we wish him well in his recovery and hope to maybe see him later this week at a future meeting. I'm going to start with the adoption of the agenda, and I'm going to make a small motion on the adjustment. Just in the order, I'm going to actually make a motion that we switch the order of delegations and bring 3.3 in front of 3.2. And the reason being that 3.2 has a request attached to it, and 3.3, they're related topic, so I figured let's have the request come after the other delegation. So that's my request. I get a mover on the amendment.
I move adoption of the agenda with item 3.3 before item 3.2.
Second by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, moving along here. We've got quite the agenda today, but try to get everyone done in time. Kings game tonight, 7 o'clock. Tickets are 2 for 1, so we'll try to make sure everyone has enough time to get there. We probably won't be, but maybe everyone else will. Adoption of the minutes. 2.1, Councillor Elliott.
I would move adoption of minutes in 2.1 and 2.2 together.
So move second by Councillor Southcott. Any deliberations? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Moving on to delegations, 3.1, Ms. Sidney Clare of ElderDog Canada regarding the new local qathet Powell River Pawd. Ms. Clare, there you are. Come on forward. Right to the microphone over here. You just adjust it to, it's kind of sensitive, so bring it right to your mouth, and you'll have 10 minutes to share.
Okay. I think I'll be quicker than that. Oh, good. Thank you. So I am here representing ElderDog Canada. We're starting a new pod or chapter called qathet Powell River Pawd of ElderDog Canada. And do I do something to forward it? Okay, great. Okay, so ElderDog Canada is a national not-for-profit charity that's dedicated to aging people, aging dogs, and the important connection they enjoy. We assist and support older adults in the care and well-being of their canine companions. So our purpose is to keep love in the home. Oop, did I go too many? Oh, there we go. So ElderDog Canada is a national not-for-profit charity dedicated to aging. I think I read that, didn't I? Yeah. It was founded 15 years ago by Dr. Ardra Cole in Nova Scotia. And to qualify for some of our programs, in general, we have to have one component of the person in need or the team in need to be elder. It has to be either an older dog or an older person. And having said that, we're a bit lenient. There's always qualifications that are, we can always take everybody into consideration. So our prime operation is with dog care support, and that might include attendance with obtaining food and feeding, assistance with animal hygiene, minor grooming, such as nail clipping, bathing, or help with brushing, dog walking, transportation to or from a vet or a groomer, or temporary care during hospitalization. Longer foster or permanent homes, foster homes are available, and our homes are all inspected for approval before dogs are sent there. We provide care and companionship for older dogs whose lives have been disrupted due to illness or death of a human companion. So for older dogs left without a caregiver, we provide foster care at an approved foster home, application to an approved home, or adoption to an approved home with an older person when possible, and help with long-term care planning. So that means that we would, if people want to make sure that their dog is cared for when they need to go into a facility that won't allow their dog, they can look into this and sign papers with us ahead of time, knowing that their dog will be well looked after. ElderDog Canada is a 100% volunteer-run organization. There are no fees for any of the services. We rely on donations to support our work. Supporting healthy aging is a community responsibility. Our volunteers must apply and submit a vulnerable sector check or a criminal record check, and they all receive orientation. So we don't just take people and say, oh yeah, you can go walk somebody's dog. They actually have some training, and we have some rules. Where was I? So we are excited to announce this is a new Pawd or chapter here in Powell River in the Qathet Regional District. And we're actively recruiting for more volunteers for many of our different activities, such as the dog care support, fostering, transportation. We're looking for volunteers who value elders, are compassionate and patient, value the human canine bond, are reliable, can make a time commitment, and have good interpersonal skills. Local volunteer opportunities are available also for leadership roles, administration support, and education events and outreach. So I have had one volunteer contact me, and she actually said she was allergic to dogs, but she still wanted to help. She loves dogs. And so I said, well, we have lots of places for you to fit in, especially I'm finding I'm not so computer literate as I thought I might be. And so we could definitely use assistance with backroom administration support. So it doesn't have to be that you volunteer to walk a dog. There's lots of opportunities. And so I do want to thank you for your time and inviting me here today and your interest in the Qathet Powell River Pawd of ElderDog Canada. I have brought some brochures for anybody who's interested. And otherwise, you can contact Christine, who is our volunteer coordinator. And I've put her email address up there, Qathet Powell River VC for volunteer coordinator at elderdog.ca, or myself, I'm the pod leader at Qathet Powell River LDR, which is for leader at elderdog.ca. I think I mentioned about the walking, and that seems to be what people think we mostly do, and certainly it's a lot of what does happen. So we do have some rules for our walkers, such as no off-leash walking, no choke chains or e-collars. We don't take the dogs to dog parks, and there's no walking your own dog at the same time. 100% of the attention and focus of the person walking the dog goes to their the dog itself. And so there's quite a bit more involved than I might have thought when I started looking into this. Do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Ms. Clare. And just for council's awareness, I met Ms. Clare at the recent Health and Wellness Fair that was done at the complex, and a brand new organization. I believe your launch is opening up next week or so?
Next week is our official opening or launch.
And so I thought coming to council would be great. So thank you for the positive information. I was holding out one. So, and there's no request at this point. It was just for information, but we'll start with questions. Councillor Elliott.
So this sounds amazing. What's your current local membership looking like? Have you managed to grab lots of people?
We have 9 leadership roles. I'm actually fulfilling 2, which is the Pawd leader and the treasurer. And I know nothing about being a treasurer. And the other one, somebody's doing the secretary, including the dog care support, and she does not want to do the secretary. So we could use people who are just willing to come and listen in on the meetings and do the minutes, and it's pretty basic and straightforward. It is encouraged that all our volunteer coordinators have at least 2 people in the position, because it is all volunteer and people go away on holidays. So by being able to have 2 people, we would be really happy to get that second person to back up and keep everything running, such as the dog care support. There's a lot of organization goes into the keeping everybody straight. Who's doing what on Tuesday? Who's walking in the morning on Thursday? Who's walking Friday afternoon? Who only wants to groom dogs, but they don't want to walk them? It's going to be a big spreadsheet of who's doing what and when they're available and when they go on holidays, and so it's going to end up being a lot of paperwork and backroom work. So we could definitely use more volunteers for the executive. And then we're also actively recruiting volunteers. I do have 2 clients already who are waiting for people to walk their dogs. One is a 90-something-year-old lady, and the other one is an older dog that the owner's unable to walk them.
Mr. Palm.
I don't think we'll be short of clients in Powell River.
Thank you, through Chair. Ms. Clare, I think I ran into you at an event at the Senior Center when Senior Day was coming up, and I had an opportunity to talk to you at that time, and I was very excited to see what you were doing in terms of servicing our seniors with pets. So this is an excellent idea, and I'm really behind you in your efforts. In terms of your funding, I understand that you're referring to this as a national program. Do you get any funding from anywhere?
It is entirely by donation. The national office in Nova Scotia administers all the funds. They provide us with startup funds for each pod. If we fundraise, we can keep a portion of it to our within our own pod. But then the rest, they will often hold it for us. If we have any needs, I think 75% of the overall budget for ElderDog Canada goes to veterinarian care. And I'm not sure what the rest is. It's all broken down after that, but it's... So
the question is, have you been receiving donations?
No, we have not received any yet. We have 2 grant proposals that are being looked into and will be written. They're both for the spring. And I thank you for that nudge. And so other than that, yeah, we will be looking at other grants so that we can have funds available locally. Definitely, it's 100% volunteer run right up to the our founder, Dr. Ardor Cole. Not one person takes any kind of administrative payment for any of the work they do. And I know from the training that I have done, and I've spent hours on this already, the people mostly in Nova Scotia, but across Canada that are running the program, they have spent hours training us. We have received a lot of training in the running of the program and just how things should be. And so everyone's putting in a lot of time, and it's completely volunteer.
So this is strictly volunteer and there's no charge to anybody that wants to access your services.
There is no charge at all.
It's unbelievable. I just want to say thank you so much for starting this up in our community. I'm sure it's going to be oversubscribed soon.
I think it will be too. Thank you all so much. Thanks for the invitation and for listening.
Oh, you still got, Councillor Southcott has a question for you.
I just found the answer to my question on the website, and that was it's a registered charity and for tax purposes. So
It is.
there's
Yes.
that as well.
Yes, definitely.
It's in small print, so it's not being advertised that you get tax receipts. But I was kind of guessing that your organization should, because of the nature of the work it does. So thank you.
Yeah, the tax receipts are produced from Nova Scotia, which is where this organization was founded, and they do them once a year. So if somebody donates in February, they're going to have to wait till the end of the year, till January, to receive them. But yeah, they're definitely tax deductible receipts.
And Councillor Elliott's thought of something else.
Just a suggestion, actually. Inclusion, Powell River runs programs for youth and people with disabilities, and they often are looking at ways to have jobs in the community and integrate folks into the community. And if you maybe provide all your information to them, they may have some fits for some volunteers from some of their clients that might work for them and for you.
The volunteers, I just want to clarify, the volunteers do not need to be elders. Volunteers
I
can
know.
be any age.
I
So
meant youth would, from their program,
They have-
volunteer for your
they
program.
have to be 18 and over to volunteer to work with the animals, to do the walking and things like that. I think, I'm not sure if they could. I would be thrilled if somebody who was younger helped me with my computer stuff, because they're the ones who know everything. And I'm not sure about, I think that kind of support could be for teens, definitely 18 and over. We definitely can take any age of volunteer, and we would really be thrilled to get lots of volunteers of all different, anybody. We'll take anybody almost.
Thank you for coming, Ms. Clare. It's been great.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to 3.3, then 3.2, we've got Mr. Hatton regarding supportive housing. Mr. Hatton.
Good evening. Or not there yet. I'd like to ask the status.
Just into the microphone, sir.
Sorry?
Just you have to talk into the microphone for it.
I'd like to know the status of where the city stands with, not sure who to call it, the BC government, whether it's BC Housing. However, there is, speaking to this thing that a decision needs to be made. I wanted to find out what the status is in terms of you're making decisions based on information that you receive. And I'm trying to find out where it is the government or whomever it would be classified as, because I'm not exactly sure who it is, but obviously somebody who wants to build another housing unit for the unhoused. And I'd like to know where that situation is at the moment. I'm not sure if I could explain it yet, but I'm trying. So do you have any idea? Is any one of you there have any idea what I'm trying to get at? In other words, what's the status of the BC government in terms of what you guys are doing?
Staff can answer the question.
Sure, Madam CEO.
Okay, through the chair to Mr. Hatton. Can you hear me?
Oh, my hearing doesn't work that well.
Okay, I'll try and speak as clearly as I can. I think what you're asking is related potentially to the proposed supportive housing. Is that correct? Okay. So I think what you're asking is what the status is of the government in terms of their relationship to the city and housing?
Tack.
Okay. Okay.
I'll try a different tack. Is the only thing holding back the decision for them to move forward, let rest in your hands?
In regards to the supportive housing project on Joyce?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, I see Councillor Doubt's hand here, so I will give him the floor.
Just, I know you're trying to get information and try to figure out what's going on. This is a period for delegations on the agenda. It's generally where people come and make comments about city business and tell us what you think and what you would like to do. There's a question period at the end of the meeting for people who have questions about things that are on the agenda. But, this is an opportunity for us to hear input from you on what you think, rather than have a series of questions.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to establish is you've put a delay on this at the moment. What does the delay do?
So right now, the topic in question is on the agenda for Thursday.
Right?
It was on October's agenda from October 10th, and it was prior to the election.
You're not going to be making decisions today.
No.
Based on that at all.
No, it's not.
You're just listening and going to make it. No. The decisions you make is that the only thing that puts a firewall between them moving? I say them, the government moving forward or not?
Well, the project has a series of layers of decisions that had to be made. So the first one was about the
bylaws,
the road, what's it called? Road dedication. Thank you. So that was the first part, and that part had to be worked with the hospital board. After the road dedication, then there's planning department and building permits and things. So there's many steps along the way. We're right at the beginning process right now.
So you folks are going to be making the decision based on what you hear. No?
Councillor Elliott, then Councillor Doe.
So some of the trouble you're running into here is council's not to be making decisions before the decision is made, right? So we can't really tell you all of the process without and leaving all the decision up. But what you really want to know is what's our role versus the government, the BC Housing's role or Vancouver Coastal Health's role and so forth. So BC Housing funds and builds housing. They need to find a location to do that. They don't need our help to do that. But in this case, the land that's being proposed for this particular project is on a road dedication next to the hospital. If that project is to go forward, we would first need to make the land compatible to that use, which would be not a road dedication and zoned differently. And then once all of those things are compatible, we could then look at a question of whether to lease the land or not lease the land. So all of those are decisions that go one after the other. And none of those decisions decide what the next decision will be, because we have to handle them each separately without fettering our future decisions. So I think what you're asking is this decision a decision that the one upcoming that is before us on Thursday, is that the only thing standing between another supportive housing unit in our community and not having one or having one? And the answer is technically no. This decision would allow us to move forward to the next decision should we decide to do that, which I can't say we would or we wouldn't because that decision isn't made yet. So on Thursday, the decision would be before council, and should they decide to move forward, all it would do is allow them to get to the next decision point. It doesn't get you all the way. And BC Housing, for their part, they could propose different locations if they had any available to them, but we're not necessarily purview to that unless it's distinctly needs to come before council. Decisions that come before council are application driven, and so we don't decide when an application's coming to us or what have you. We just receive them and try to make decisions when they're on our agenda. So we're a bit of a reactive kind of body that way. And we can't really speak ahead of time to that decision as far as what we think it will or won't be, because that would be not appropriate.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Doubt as well, Mr. Hatton.
I just want to say that my answer is my opinion only. I don't speak for everybody on council because they haven't had a chance to discuss and vote on this yet. We have a motion that's coming to the table on Thursday. It was delayed a couple of weeks ago, and it's simply a rezoning idea to move to rezone and to change the ownership of a piece of property from road dedication to institutional, so that supportive housing could possibly be built there. I don't know what's going to happen on Thursday night. The motion may pass, the motion may be rejected, or it may be delayed even more. Okay, and that's simply a city thing. All that does is make a decision on the zoning and the proper use for that property. BC Housing makes its own decision. There is no way that I or anybody around the table can foretell what BC Housing is going to do. If we say yes to the rezoning, if we say no, or if we delay it. Those decisions are totally within the hands of BC Housing. So I hope that clarifies it. If you have questions about the housing project built by BC Housing, that's who to ask. Okay, what our business of this council on Thursday night is rezoning a piece of land to make it possible to build an institutional building. And all of the different reactions that BC Housing might have are totally within their control and not within ours.
Okay, I've just trying to establish in my mind so that I ask all the right relevant questions. This is my first into coming into this thing, and the only thing that I'm questioning about is the fact that I happen to live over there. I'm a caregiver. My wife has a problem, two of them. And it's my job to make sure that she's in. The reason I moved there was specifically to make sure that it was going to be a safe place for her to be. And at the moment, up until it gets built, it is. The moment it gets built, now, I'm still of the I still get this idea that you're the ones that make the decision, that say yes or no to this easement of the road. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but rezoning it to from a road to a a place to build, but the fact remains that does that decision come from here?
Yes, in the end, the decision on Thursday is about the
Thank
road
you.
dedication or not.
That's all I'm trying to do is clear it up and be clear. I have no axe to grind. I don't. I just want to do it what seems to be morally or ethically correct. And that's why I'm talking to you folks. There must have been some reason to put you into your need to get into these positions to do what you're doing. So you have some, obviously. So it still comes, as you were saying, from the decision for it to move forward comes from here.
Sure.
Councillor Joe.
The only decision,
Make a decision.
the only decision that council will make on Thursday is whether or not to rezone the possible uses of that property. Anything to move it forward would have, it's a BC housing project. BC Housing would have to make any decisions after that to move it forward. The city may or may not be involved in any of that.
The CAO has some comments.
Through the chair, I'm aware that it's a bit difficult for hearing. And Mr. Hatton, could I perhaps suggest, if you'd like, could we as staff meet with you tomorrow and lay out the process so you're able to ask your questions? Would that be helpful? Okay.
You folks are going to be the ones eventually to allow them to move forward, if that's a better word. Would you like that one?
Councillor Isaacson.
I would say for the piece of property that BC Housing is interested in, yes, they need our support in order for that site to move ahead.
Thank you very
In
much.
some other communities, BC Housing might already own land and they don't need to check in with the city. They can just build. In this case, the piece of land that they're interested in does require council approval of things like zoning and road dedication in order for that to be possible.
So if all the people that seemingly are here, and they're here because they have a feeling for that they prefer not to, I've spoken to a fair number, not exactly each individual, but wouldn't be here if they weren't. If these folks are upset by it and don't want it, do they have any recourse? Is this it?
Yeah, so we've already received many emails, as we do every week, on this matter and other matters, where members of the public have expressed their concerns or comments or questions regarding this topic. And our staff do a great job of compiling those, and of late, they all get posted to the website as well on a weekly basis to see what other comments are there, or sometimes they show up on the agenda. Councillor Isaacson.
I was going to say, I mean, ultimately, there's two main recourses that residents of the city have when it comes to dissatisfaction with, well, actually three courses, dissatisfaction with decisions at council. One is they can let us know by writing to us or coming to a meeting like you are. And so that's one possibility. The other is, second is if a councillor has participated in a decision and broken a rule somehow, they could apply to the Supreme Court to have a councillor removed from office, but that requires a rule to be broken. And the third is voting at elections. So unfortunately, it means for residents that are upset kind of in between elections, the main way to let us know is by writing us letters or attending in front of council. And so when we make decisions, we listen to people's input and consider that when making decisions.
Thank you. Again, this kind of straight talk is kind of nice because very little of it seems to appear anywhere these days.
Mr. Hatton, we do have a limit of 10 minutes for delegations. We did surpass that a few minutes ago. So I appreciate your questions at this point. We do have another delegation coming up on a similar topic, and there is a question period at the end of the agenda for any questions related to topics on the matter. But I did make a promise to everyone to try and get him to the Kings game tonight, so I would like to keep to that as well. Thank you, sir. Moving on to 3.2, Westview Ratepayers regarding housing the unhoused.
Hi, everybody. Put that there. Chair and councillors, I want to thank you for allowing Westview Ratepayers to present today. We do appreciate it. Our presentation is not about new issues. It is about two specific requests that we would like council to act on immediately. On October 8th, Lorraine Edmonds presented to the Committee of the Whole regarding many concerns about the current supportive housing. Her comments were based on her vast experience as a registered psychiatric nurse in Powell River, specializing in mental health and addiction. At the October 10th council meeting, council discussed the correspondence received from TL Madel and her concerns regarding supportive housing. Ms. Madel based her observations and concerns on almost 40 years' experience working as a federal public servant, assisting incarcerated men and women who are reintegrating into the community, many of whom are unhoused and dealing with mental health and addiction problems. Both Ms. Evans and Ms. Madel are experts in their fields, and the concerns that they raised during those two meetings were substantial. During the past month, the Westview Ratepayers Supportive Housing Subcommittee has consulted with Ms. Madel and with Ms. Evans to discuss shared concerns and strategies regarding the current supportive housing complex and what should be done before a second complex is approved. It is our, and I mean our means our committee and them, it is our collective view that council should immediately adopt the two motions that we've sent to you. We've sent you two motions, you received them earlier. The first motion, as you know, asks that council request BC Housing to immediately fund an external, objective, and empirical evaluation of the existing housing complex. And further, that this evaluation should be made public and be used to assess the merits and viability of the second BC Housing supportive housing project before any decision is made by council. Our expert consultants during those two meetings and our meeting with them raised many specific concerns involving a range of issues of the current supportive housing, such as the number of successes, the number of disappearances, deaths, overdoses, the number of staff and EMS interventions with respect to these. Further concerns raised by the consultants centered on supportive housing management, cleanliness, hoarding, contraband, theft, and fire safety. There are grave concerns that were expressed about chronic staffing issues, shortages, training, and oversight. There is also a need to address and acknowledge the community component and community assessment of how the current housing complex is being managed. An evaluation of both client support and community impact is essential. Once the evaluation is completed and published, it will assist the community and council to evaluate the merits and the viability of the new BC Housing supportive housing proposal. So we're asking that you adopt the motion to ask for this study. Second, the second motion is not a new ask. In fact, this is the third time we've raised it with council. The development of a comprehensive plan for the city would allow us to discuss the needs of both the clients and the community, what needs to be done to address the needs of the unhoused in a more comprehensive and holistic manner. We are not against providing housing for the unhoused. We want it. But it must be more than just providing housing. Programs and services attached to this housing must be properly structured and staffed to help clients address their needs for support and/or treatment. In asking for this task force, we are not asking for city staff involvement. We appreciate city staff have a lot of work on their plates. We believe that this task force can be self-run and rely on the expertise of consultants such as Ms. Evans and Ms. Medell, community representatives, and many others to develop the plan that we need for going forward. So we're requesting council to act on supporting the creation of a comprehensive plan for our city. Now, we believe these motions are reasonable and they're doable, but only if action is undertaken immediately. Now, this request that I make to you today has been endorsed by both the Town Site Ratepayers Society and by the Wildwood Ratepayers Association. So it is in effect a request from all three of us. We all believe that now is a time for council to show leadership and to show to the community that it is undertaking the due diligence required to build community confidence and the best possible outcome for housing the unhoused in this city going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. We've got Councillor Southcott up first.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Craig. Obviously, we've all thought about this a lot, and I have for sure. And I appreciate you sending us the document with your resolutions on it ahead of time, so we could consider this carefully. Without making this more complicated, I think this is something that is definitely doable here. The one thing that I don't agree with is sending any work outside of town quite yet, because I really think that parameters, metrics for any kind of study need to be decided upon and very carefully defined. And having experts like the two volunteers that you cited already could very likely be very useful in terms of that. I also have had experience with homelessness since 30 years ago in the career that I retired from 6 years ago. So what I would support is something like what you're suggesting here. I don't know whether I'd call it a task force exactly, because I think a task force is designed for one specific purpose. And I see a working group actually extending for longer than the achievement of one specific purpose. Now, this kind of reflects back to, I think, what the expectations were of the community advisory group for the supportive housing that goes back at least a couple of years. But I think some of the concept that was involved in that suggestion are still valid and could be incorporated without diluting the central purpose. What I would like to see is a couple of councillors, representatives from Westview Ratepayers, and I don't think we need staff, but also because staff is, as you said, very busy and currently. However, I think eventually city staff could be involved, but that would depend on work, as I see it, by this working group or task force, if you want to call it that. And also, I'd like to see a representative from LIFT. There's been some staff changes there, but I think it would be extremely useful if we had a contact, and I think there's someone from LIFT who's knowledgeable enough and has enough authority to actually inform a group like this well. So that is what I would support. This would have to be rewritten a little bit, and I would suggest that a working group come together and then define its own terms of reference, which you've provided here, but this comes from your group. I'd like to see this a little more broadly representative of those who would participate in what I'm suggesting. So I'm not going to make a motion, but that could lead to a motion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Southcott. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Craig. So one of the tricky parts of social mandate when it comes to what we do versus what the province does versus what other people do is whose jurisdiction is it, right? So here in the city, we actually have no jurisdiction around housing the homeless or funding the shelters or any of the operations of any of those program areas. And the province, by its very nature, often tries to roll out programs that they can be consistent in communities, and they do these one size fits all, which is why they run into so much different communities need different things, and they don't seem to have the tools to address that all the time. I sit on a few advisory committees, one of which is the Ferry Advisory Committee and Western Forest Products Advisory Committee. I sit on our community action team. I'm on the Social Housing Advisory Committee, and what those are driven by and have the buy-in of the companies that have the jurisdiction, so that when you are able to provide input, they are the people that implement it. So a housing roundtable also exists, which I also attend with some other folks that I know. And they are also trying to focus on trying to move projects ahead to create non-market affordable housing and try to alleviate the issue of homelessness in our community. And so the struggle we have is having all the great ideas and have them endorsed by the folks who fund them. And I see the weakness of the proposal that you have is essentially to put together some folks to advocate with someone else who has all the jurisdiction. And I think we need to have those folks with those jurisdictions at our table and fit within their framework a bit so that they're willing to listen to us. For advocacy, that the city, we do that all the time through UBCM, AVICC, and writing letters to the Premier if we have something we want to write about. We get involved with processes such as the Utility Commission one a little while back as interveners. But if we step forward and try to take the lead on an issue that we have no jurisdiction, it's likely to cost us a ton of money. And even with just volunteers, we still have to implement stuff, and we don't really have the ability of doing that without spending money on it. And then there's no guarantee that spending that money will get us anywhere, and we lose our leverage for partnering as well, because the province is great. You can do whatever you want. Go ahead. You can fund it while you're at it. And so it's a bit of a balancing act to try and use the provincial system and make it work for us. And so we need to flesh this out a little more, because the process that's being proposed here is not necessarily going to get the buy-in of BC Housing or the funders, and it may create a system where it looks like the city's trying to take over jurisdiction where we really don't want to be. We don't want to be funding that into the future or taking on that jurisdiction, because it will end up expensive for our community. And so we need to protect our community also from taking on funding problems that the province really is trying to offload on to us all the time, and we're trying to push back on that offloading. And so I think it's wonderful to have all these conversations and try to come up with the right ideas. I belong to a ton of committees and conversations about trying to solve just these problems, and I've talked to you lots too. I even go meet over with the hospital all the time. And the trick is that the folks who are having the jurisdiction have to buy in, and we have to advocate for ourselves and get that to happen. And finding the best way to do that is what you're trying to do. And I appreciate that, and I want to participate, and I'll show up in whatever you want me to. But that doesn't, we the city can't decide to dive into somebody else's jurisdiction unless there's more definition around that. We're not there at this time.
Can I answer you?
Well, it's just my perspective on what you're trying to say, and the barriers I see to just doing these motions are that those aren't our jurisdiction. They're not. We can't really tell the province how to run their programs without risking some relationship aspects that won't help us in the long run.
I mean, from my perspective, it means that we simply say then the province should decide and let's not worry about it because it's not ours to do. And I don't think that's acceptable because I don't think the province has shown when you do a centralized approach that you can sometimes do things that fit well in every community. Communities are different.
I know.
From my point of view, the value of doing this is that if we can have some clarity on what we think will work, then we can talk to them and say, well, you've got ideas, but we think this is better. We're not responding to what they're telling us. We're going to them and saying, this is what we need. And if we're not proactive, they're going to have to fund it because it won't happen otherwise. And they may reject it. But at least they can understand that we have a sense of what we think is best for this community. And rather than them coming and just telling us what's best, we're actually trying to take a leadership role. Now, in the end of the day, you're right. They may not choose to do it. But at least it means that we, are in a better position to respond to what they're proposing. Right now, they're going to come up with something here and something there and something there and something there. And then each time we're going to respond piecemeal. And what are we creating? And they're busy. They're trying to do every community. We're just a name. We're one of them they tick off. And to me, if we don't, I'm not saying change the power of council. I'm saying take leadership around social visioning that we can use when we engage with these institutions that come knocking on the door offering these things. That's what I'm hoping for. And the other point is, I do have a bit of a bugbear around the fact that we're not even allowed to attend the social housing meetings because we've been disinvited, because we're not a provider. Well, that's not good for community. But that's my point. That's just me being cranky. Okay.
Councillor Palm.
Thank you, through the chair. Mr. Craig, I want to thank you for coming forward this evening and explaining where your motions have come from and the experts that you've brought to the table to express those. That is very helpful for me. And, the role of this council is to listen to the citizens of this community. And I'm very happy to hear that you've reached out to the other two ratepayers groups, so you have a broad representation as to these motions and where they're coming from, because they come from the citizens of Powell River. I hear you loud and clear. And without the due diligence that you are proposing to allow council to make an informed decision as to where we go on this topic is a disservice to the people of Powell River, because we need more answers. We don't have all the information, and what you're asking for here would shed some light on the road going forward and hopefully come up with a system that the citizens can live with under the auspice of supportive housing. Because one of the things that we were promised was we are going to expand the services to provide a greater level of care. Well, the second housing is supportive housing, the same as we have. That gives me cause for concern. And I'm not going to go into all the particulars now because I will have a lot to say on Thursday evening based on the feedback that we've already received from our citizens and in terms of the location that's being proposed. So I'll just leave it at there, but I want to thank you so much for bringing this forward, and hopefully we can work with you to come up with something for council they can live with so we can all work together to solve this issue.
And we do want to work with council. We are a community. It's important.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to reserve most of my comments, I think, for Thursday when we get into the decisions that we have in front of us. Just a note on the housing roundtable. I know you and I have talked about this, and so I just want to clarify for people who are like, what's this housing committee? And so there was a fairly large group of people that were invited together to talk about forming a housing roundtable. And in that first meeting, a lot of those who are not involved in the provision of housing, like the library and ratepayers and community justice and a variety of groups attended. And at this time, I've been supporting those who are actively involved in getting people housed to develop, a terms of reference and a structure. And it's so ad hoc right now. But it's, there's no active work of that roundtable right now. But I want to acknowledge that the group who has met 3 times are those who are actively involved in getting people housed. And then because they are the ones who can make it possible if we are focused on affordable housing, and then how they decide to have membership or communication or whatever will be up to that group. But it's there is a model on the lower coast of a roundtable that has subcommittees on homelessness and seniors housing and workforce housing, and so there are some existing models out there. But it's I'm not an appointed liaison. It's an ad hoc group that's trying to get something going. So yeah, the ratepayers were not singled out as being disinvited. It was anyone who wasn't involved in actively getting people housed. We're just focusing on the housing right now. Yeah, I'll leave comments till Thursday when we get into the motions that are in front of us to actually decide on. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So Mr. Craig was referring to the Supportive Housing Advisory Committee when he said that. Is that correct? Or were you referring to the roundtable that is basically a self-organized group?
Yeah, I was referring to the second one. We attended just because we're interested in that and we want to help. But
right. Okay.
But generally, one of the reasons we're asking for some of this is because we want to be involved, and right now we don't have any way to be other than to come here and talk to you from time to time and send you emails, right? And we feel that, we've got a really good subcommittee. We've got people like Teal that's joined and others, and a lot of experience, and people that are the community reps are there. I mean, it's a group of expertise. And so we just are looking for ways to, and also we're trying to get a sense of where this is going, a direction.
Yeah.
We don't want it to stumble along, decisions to be made ad hoc as you go time, because we don't know, it doesn't create comfort, doesn't create confidence. And we need that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
To carry what I was saying earlier a little bit farther forward, why don't you invite a couple of councillors to your working group and a representative of LIFT? Because I think that sounds like exactly what I was wanting to suggest. And I don't think that requires a motion of council.
So the idea is we'd invite a couple of councillors and LIFT to talk about what we could do together. I'm expecting LIFT wouldn't have any problem with this because I appeared in front of you with LIFT originally when we asked for this, right? At least the task force part, right? The other motion, of course, is something that I'm sure LIFT isn't totally happy about. The first motion, which is just trying to get a comprehensive evaluation. So there's 2 pieces here. Certainly on the second piece, whatever way it takes to make it happen, we could discuss.
Yeah, I think the thoughts I've had listening to the councillors, I think Councillor Southcott makes a good point over here that, as Councillor Isaacson just shared, the housing roundtable is mostly ad hoc right now by a group of members of the community that happen to be connected because they all are involved in housing of some kind. Everyone has kind of pointed out our staff bandwidth is pretty limited right now as we're shorthanded a few players. I personally find it hard to believe that we could have a committee that was supported by council without any staff involvement. I think staff involvement would be anything coming down from this table is going to require some staff involvement. But Councillor Southcott's idea of casually inviting a couple councillors, and I'm sure there's several, at least 3. You can't get 4 because that'd be quorum. But I think getting 2 to 3 councillors to be involved would open that conversation a little bit in the direction that you're looking for, and getting Lift to the table and a few others. Councillor Dope.
Yeah, conversations this evening are fascinating. We're going around in a lot of circles, and the circles are expanding, which is always a good thing. What Councillor Southcott's suggestion, which the Wildwood and Townsite Ratepayers can do, and Westview Ratepayers can do all on their own, is invite a couple of councillors to come and talk to your subcommittee. There's no problem with doing that. Council doesn't have to be involved. Also, the councillors that you invite would be coming on their own time, of their own interest, and wouldn't have any authority to make any decisions on council. Same way as the Housing Roundtable doesn't have any people appointed to it from the city. There's no official representatives of the city on that round table. There are councillors who attend. I think staff members attend from time to time, but they have no status as far as being a committee or a working group or any kind of authorized group for the city. But, talking to more people usually comes up with better ideas. So,
we would like is we've made lots of requests to council, and generally they go nowhere, right? We've made requests in the past. So I'd like council just to say yes or no. I mean, we've got 2 requests. They're not unreasonable. Just say yes or no. We can modify. When you can modify, you can say, well, on the second one, we say yes, but with modifications. But what you're saying is have councillors come and talk to us. It's an unofficial process. It doesn't go anywhere. It's ad hoc. It has no authority. You're just saying, you go off and do your own thing. That's not what we're asking. So I would just say yes or say no, but tell us. Let us have an answer.
Can't do that.
No, but you can do it. You can think about it. You can meet again. I don't expect an answer today. It doesn't have to be today, but I would like an answer.
I've got the CAO and then a couple of councillors after.
Through the chair to council and also to yourself, exactly what Councillor Elliott said is, I was just going to say, council, you would have to refer this to a council meeting to make a decision related to it. So I was just going to point out the procedure, Craig. Thank you.
CAO, I can't hear you when you turn your head around and talk from the microphone.
My apologies. I was relaying to our delegation that the request would have to go, council would have to make a recommendation for council to consider it because you're at committee. So I was just reaffirming what Councillor Elliott said. Thank you.
And I had Councillor Palm, then followed by Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. I'm going to make my final comments brief, and that is, as I've previously said, I welcome this type of endeavor to get more answers, and perhaps we can do something on Thursday evening after we've given your submission some further thought. Because one of the things that definitely comes to mind for me is not only do we not have all the answers, I'm not sure that the government of BC and BC Housing at this point has all the answers based on some of the comments that were made by the Premier after the election that we have to do a better job and we're going to have to make some modifications to our service in this regard. So all of those questions are in the air. So I'm going to be advocating not to proceed at lightning speed on this, delay the process so that we can get further input. That's where I'm coming from, and it's only my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Craig.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. I was just gonna, when you say, you are looking for a yes or a no, in order for us to do either, there has to be a motion on the floor to be able to get an answer. And until there's a motion on the floor, the answer is kind of no. But if a motion was on the floor, then you'd have a clear answer whether it was yes or no. But we don't do yes or no's as a group unless there's a motion that someone chooses to put on the floor, and we don't have one. Yep, thank you.
We have submitted 2 motions for you that we're asking you to put on the floor. So it's up to you to decide to do it or not. If you don't, it'll be a no. We understand that. But we tried to be as direct as we can be on this. And we put a lot of work into this. We're not just coming here, flying off the, I mean, there are a lot of people that are invested. And so we're trying to give you that help, and we hope you will take it seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Appreciate the effort the ratepayers have put into this. As Councillor Isaacson said, rather, it's there's nothing on the table right now, but we do have a vote coming up on Thursday. We have the information in front of us today. A few councils have already expressed a few things, so it's possible it could come up to council discussion at a future meeting. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you, Mr. Craig. We're going to move into staff reports for decision. We've got staff joining us remotely today, and appreciate all the staff and the time, the energy they put into the reports. I know stepping in, we've got, well, I can talk for a little bit. That's fine. No, it's fine. I'm just going to talk. Stepping into the active mayor role this month has been filling in for the mayor while he's away has been taxing on staff for sure, trying to balance the juggling act of Councillor Southcott being the mayor last month to me stepping into this month. So appreciate all the staff and the balancing that they've been doing in the last couple of weeks. Now the calm is quieted, so I'll pass it over to the CAO.
Okay, Council, so I'd like to introduce the following report on proposed property policy 271.
Point of order. Point of order, Chair.
We can ask the crowd, please, to keep the chatter down. Thank you. CAO.
I did call a point of order, though.
Sorry.
So my point of order was, while we're having like folks moving around so much and leaving, it might be nice to just call a brief pause because nobody can hear a single thing.
Yeah. Just me rambling anyways, so. CAO.
Okay, through the chair, I have Ms. Cuthbertson available for questions, but briefly, this report is coming back to you following your direction on October 8th, where you directed staff to propose a new policy to replace the lease rate bylaw 2736. What we put forward to aligns with Council's strategic priority under the heading of economic vibrancy, where you have a priority to explore opportunities for increased revenue generation, looking at the city's assets essentially. And what we've got before you also aligns with the community charter requirement for municipalities to charge fair market value for city-owned real estate. So staff are proposing a draft policy for your consideration, policy 271. And it basically in Appendix B gives a combination of different methods that staff can use to evaluate the market rate for the lease of different city properties. So staff have put a lot of thought and effort into this. I'm going to pause there. You've got the report, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Councillor Isaacson.
I was kind of pausing to see if there's any hands raised, but I can move right into the recommended motions to get us into debate if needed. I move that committee recommends that council repeal lease rate bylaw 2736 2024.
Second by Councillor Southcott. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in, Councillor Elliott, was that a question?
Yeah, so I kind of thought we would have questions of council on the report before moving to the motion part. I'm not opposed to moving into the motions. I just wondered if we had, as part of this structure, a way to consider whether we are treating anything differently based on council priorities, or is that strictly to the granting programs or other avenues, and this is just our getting our lease rates and stuff policy, and then perhaps if we wanted to say do a lease for less money to support something, does that belong here or does that belong elsewhere, or is that? Do you understand the question?
Through the chair to Councillor, yes, I do. And staff have considered that and will be coming back with some options. So where we have our lessees who happen to be nonprofits, their existing lease rates stay, but we will be coming back to you with some options about how we can customize this for you to consider either through granting or through a special designation under an amendment to the current lease rate. This at least gets us in the running for what we're supposed to do with market-based non-nonprofits, but regular entities. So the intention is that following your consideration or direction, we would be coming back to you at a future date with how nonprofits and other entities could be considered with regard to city assets. Thank you. While making sure we also meet the community charter's requirements.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Point of order, was there a seconder for the motion?
Yes, Councillor Southcott. Yeah. So that one passes unanimously.
So I move that the committee recommends that council adopt City Property Policy 271 attached to this report titled Draft Property Policy dated November 5th, 2024.
Second by Councillor Southcott.
Aren't we moving it to council though, or?
The committee recommends to council.
Any questions? Yep, seeing, Councillor Southcott.
There's a typo in here somewhere, and I made note of it. I think it's in the policy. It makes the rate, I believe, for Timberlane property ambiguous. It isn't specifically. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's the second bullet point on 2.2 in Appendix B. It shouldn't say per square foot. It's minor. That's the total as in the previous bylaw.
Okay, through the chair, I'm going to ask
High rent.
Ms. Cuthbertson to confirm that Councillor Southcott's correction is appropriate, and then through the chair, you would amend it as per, recommend that council accept it as amended.
Through the chair, thank you very much, Councillor Southcott, for noticing. You are indeed correct, and that should be amended. Much appreciated.
We need to amend the motion on the floor, I guess. Okay, so, Councillor Isaacson.
I propose an amendment under 2.2, the last bullet point, remove per square foot.
Second by Councillor Southcott. Seeing no questions, all in favor? Unanimous. Moving back to our main amended motion now. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Number 3.
Move that the committee recommends that council direct staff to continue developing City Property Policy 271 to include processes for all types of acquisitions and disposals of city-owned property.
By Councillor Southcott, just clarification on this, because it's a staff direction, council doesn't need to approve it, right? The committee can just approve it?
Through the chair, if I could confirm with Ms. Walls regarding this one.
Through the chair, that is correct. This can be directed at the committee level if you wish.
We need to change the wording, or is it good enough? Amendment?
So I can move an amendment to strike recommends that council and change direct to directs.
Second by Councillor Southcott. I see no questions. All in favor of the amendment? Unanimous. Yeah, now all in favor of the amended motion? Unanimous. That concludes 5.1. Moving to 5.2, the committee system policy.
Okay, through the chair, I'll introduce this one again, and I have Ms. Walls available to guide us through any questions. So based on council's review of the procedure bylaw, one of the things that came up was that the council would benefit from the establishment of a formal policy speaking to the structure of committees. This would allow for consistency in how committees are formed and administered, and also provide for better guidelines for members of the community and others who apply to be on our committees. So you've got the attachments before you. This is a report for your consideration and decision. And so, Ms. Walls, I don't know if you'd like to add anything to this before council discuss.
Through the chair, nothing much further, other than, yeah, we're just seeking direction to refer approval to council.
Start with questions. Councillor Dope.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's really a question or just a comment. So I've seen this, and I understand the reasons that are explained why we probably should have a policy like this. And the idea, I believe staff has gone through and done the work of trying to create a policy from other ones. And when I read it, I'm looking to try to make some understanding of just exactly how our process would be. And I haven't had a chance, because I only saw it yesterday, as a matter of fact, to go through in detail of the policy itself. I haven't had a chance to compare it with other policies that the city has, and that I'm not sure the city has. I think we were working on a council liaison policy. I'm not sure if we ever adopted that, but it had a list of council liaison positions and how you got to be a council liaison person. And council liaisons show up in a heading of one of the paragraphs here. I think it's on somewhere around paragraph 2.1. And it's not clear in my mind. The heading says councillor liaison, or council liaison, but the paragraph doesn't say anything about council liaison. And, you know, to the issues like 2.1C, mixes standing committees and select committees, and whether the mayor or council will appoint people. And there's other questions I came up discovering halfway through, is whether the mayor or whether council appoints vice chairs and chairs of the different committees ahead of time. And, you know, I've had lots of discussions with committees who've always pointed out to me that they would like to be the people who elect the chairs of the committees would like to be the people on the committee, not have somebody or council appoint who the chairs and vice chairs are. So this is a good piece of work. It's a lot of work, but I also would like to have a chance to compare it with our current procedure bylaw, which was adopted back, I think, in 2016, and our procedure bylaw that we've done so much work on that I hope we're going to see pretty soon, and things like the council liaison policy. I'd like to be able to go through all of those and take my time investigating them, and I don't think we have time to do that before our next council meeting that comes up towards the end of November. So I'm probably going to make a motion to postpone this after we have a discussion about it.
Sir Isaacson.
Yeah, a couple of questions for Deputy Corporate Officer Walls. So one is, as Councillor Doubt mentioned, 2.1A, it says council shall appoint individual council members to select committees and designate the chair and vice chair. And so does that, it sounds like the intention of that is for council for council members to be the chair and vice chair, or is the intention for council to appoint from the membership of the committee as a whole?
Through the chair, that would, you could select a member of the committee. It would be up to council to select whoever they'd like to be the chair. However, it's often recommended, just in terms of running meetings, members of the public aren't always familiar with the running of meetings and governance of meetings and things, so it can often be easiest for a member of council to be the chair. So that's often what happens. However, council could select the chair and vice chair from any member of the committee if they feel that someone would be better suited to it. And in addition to if you wanted to, in addition to Councillor Doubt's comments, if you wanted to make it any kind of changes to provisions of this, if you wanted the membership to choose the chair or something along those lines, you could certainly make that change as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think similar to Councillor Doubt, I also have opinions on chair and vice chair and whether they come from committee. I think definitely, chairing a committee takes a bit of practice and knowledge, but it's not insurmountable. But it also leaves the creation of the agenda in the hands of a council member. And I think I remember attending a training early on council, and I forget if it was legal or Elimina or George Cuff, I forget who, but a recommendation that, council appointees to select committees in particular are better to be ones without much of an opinion on the issue, that are meant to be council liaisons and a support to the committee members, but not necessarily there as they have voting membership, but are there more as a connection between the committee and council, and not to move their own views forward. But neither here nor there. One thing that isn't addressed in here is whether or not the meetings are recorded. And I know that, sometimes I would like to attend committee meetings but don't make it. And I know that the minutes are kind of insufficient to understand the fullness of the conversation. Is there, are there any policies about recording and, having the recordings available online, not just attending virtually? Could you speak to if that was an intentional exclusion or whether it's covered somewhere else?
Through the chair, at this time, it's not covered anywhere. As you know, we don't currently record committee meetings. If council again wanted to add a provision for recording every committee meeting, you're certainly welcome to. I think it would just need a bit of extra IT support for each committee meeting, but we do it several times every month, so we certainly know how.
Yeah. I know Councillor Doubt mentioned he might make a motion to refer this to a future meeting in order to have time to compare. I also am generally of the belief that, perfect should not be the enemy of good enough. And so there's a lot in here, I think, that could support staff in their work with committees and help council as we propose committees. And because it's a policy and not a bylaw, the ability to change it in the future and make those minor changes come back to council is quite easy. And so, overall, generally, this policy is good. If we want, but I guess I'm looking to I'm only the second person to have talked, and so I don't know if the will of council is with me on that. I'm always hesitant to propose motions on something new when we haven't had an opportunity to discuss or hear from all council members. So I would say the only other item that's maybe missing for me is references in here to the procedure bylaw and the future code of conduct, because those also impact I don't remember seeing it in here. The community charters reference, but not those other two policies, one of them which doesn't exist yet, but will. And also the word citizen is used throughout, and citizen doesn't actually have a definition in terms of a city. It does when it comes to a nation like Canada. But I think we usually use the word resident because we are talking about people who live in the city. And so that would be my main change up that I'm interested in at this time. I think that's it for general thoughts on this.
Councillor Southcott, sorry, I missed you last time. I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Ahead, and then Councillor Elliott after. Yep.
Question. Staff support. In the staff support section, there are staff liaison and clerk function. In previous committee, this is an innovation, and I'm just wondering why the two jobs have been separated. it might be, more efficient to do it that way. But in the past, it's always been usually one staff support person doing both functions. So I'm curious about that. I'm obviously it could still be one staff person doing both things. But does this just leave the room for two staff people to do two different functions?
Through the chair, frequently we have, maybe I'll give the Harbor Committee as an example, somebody who is very familiar with the operations of the harbor. There is a technical liaison to the committee to answer questions, and then somebody who is very familiar with the process and procedure and supporting the chair in running the meeting. Two sometimes very distinct functions. And so depending on the committee, it could be the same person, but frequently where it requires specialized technical knowledge, you wouldn't have a director providing or a manager who provides technical information, also being an expert on the process and recording minutes and actions. Thank you.
Just one more. Just relative to previous conversation about this item, I also would support flexibility in language so that the chair could be, in select committees anyway, the chair could be chosen out of the committee. I'm aware that has occurred. I believe the Finance Advisory Committee, the chair, was it that one? Anyway, it has happened in the past. So it's good if you've got someone who can actually chair the meeting, who knows how to do it. I absolutely agree how important that is. But I'd like to see that kind of flexibility in the language. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott, followed by Councillor Palm.
Okay, so first of all, I think when we get to the part where we're asking to forward this to council, we could easily ask to forward to the next meeting down the road to give that extra time for people to read, digest, and come forward with their ideas for changes if they need to. 2 weeks, if that isn't sufficient, we could go with 4 weeks. So that was just my comment on Councillor Doubt's concerns earlier. One of the things that kind of confused me at first was the use of the word liaison in the title for number 2, the council liaison or council membership, and it looks like we're strictly talking about standing or select committees. But when I think of council liaison, I'm thinking about external agencies and liaison that we have with them, because we're not liaison on those types of committees that we're talking about. And so I just thought that word is causing me confusion and might cause others confusion, because I thought the policy might be about how we become appointed to actual liaisons on external agencies, and that's not what this is about. And so I don't think we have council liaisons with our internal stuff. We have membership. So I just wanted to flag that. And I would be happy to spend a little more time at digesting this if that's the council's will, and maybe push it to, I think we don't need to indefinitely delay or anything, but just to pick when we would like to see it come back to council.
Councillor Palm.
Thank you, through the chair. Good comments all the way around, and there seems to be a whole range of questions in terms of certain issues in this comprehensive review of this policy. And there's a lot of meat on the bone here, and I haven't had a chance to really digest and go through the many points that have been outlined by council, as well as the many specific concerns I have. So I would concur with Councillor Doubt that we should defer this to the next committee of the whole, so that we have time to review and come prepared with our many questions to have answered, because committee of the whole is the place that should be done, not at a council meeting. So that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you.
Councillor Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to provide a little more detail about some of my concerns. And paragraph 2 and 2.1 particularly, and that's the one, I'll just read it so everybody's on the same page. Councillor liaison / council membership. None of those are talked about in the paragraph. It's number 1 says 2.1 heading is council appointments. And it says council shall appoint individual council members to select committees and designate the chair and vice chair. And paragraph B says the mayor shall designate the members of council to serve as chair and vice chair of standing committees. Both the chair and the vice chair of a committee shall be entitled to vote, and the mayor may appoint alternate council members to standing committees, and council may appoint alternate council members for select committees. That's a lot of stuff. There's nothing about any council liaison in there. And the appointment of chairs and vice chairs is mentioned other places in this document, as well as other places in the procedure document, and probably in our adopted council liaison policy. And I think it's really important to go through those, because the idea is we'll set a policy and then we'll know when we're setting up a committee how we're going to do it. You know, are the chairs going to be elected by the committee members, or are they being appointed by the mayor, or are they being appointed by council? And you know, what are really the duties of council liaisons? And the reason I was going to make a motion to postpone rather than just to the next committee of the whole meeting, because we have done a lot of work on the procedure bylaw, and I would like to see how this policy intertwines with the new procedure manual. Procedure bylaw. I'm hoping that comes back to us pretty soon. It's been away for quite some time for getting legal advice. I think we had a meeting in early July to, and the outcome of that was to send it back to staff to get legal advice on where we were going to go. So that's what I have to say. I think this is going to take quite a bit more work. It's an extensive policy, and it deserves to be carefully gone over to make sure we understand what we're doing and not creating conflicts within the policy that we'll have to come back and make decisions on sometime.
So, I see you're ready there. So, Mike, I piggyback Councillor Dowd's question, I guess. Do we have a timeline on the procedure bylaw? And then are we thinking, I'm wondering if it makes sense to defer this to the next committee meeting or to have a separate procedure bylaw / committee system policy workshop on a different day maybe as well?
Yeah, through the chair, I see Ms. Walls has her hands up, so I think she has an update for us on the legal review of that. And I will say thank you for your consideration of this matter, because even if we defer it, Committee of the Whole is absolutely the right place for the concerns and the comments that you're bringing forward. So over to Ms. Walls.
Through the chair, just a few notes to address some of the questions that have been raised. We do have the community liaison policy was adopted last year, and so I think it's a little using the language. Community or council liaison is the language overlaps, but I don't think the role overlaps, being a community liaison versus a council liaison in regards to a committee. With the procedure bylaw, we're just going over the legal review and the old version versus the new version, and that should be coming to the next round of meetings this month. In terms of referencing this policy in the procedure bylaw, it would reference this policy as a piece of instruction for forming committees. So while related, having this in place wouldn't necessarily impact what's in the procedure bylaws. The procedure bylaw just references the policy regardless. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Isaacson.
I move to refer this agenda item to the Committee of the Whole after the procedure bylaw is brought to us.
I'll second that.
Seeing no questions, all in favor? That's unanimous. Okay. Be determined at a later date. Moving on to 5.3, council remuneration.
Okay, through the chair, I'll introduce this one again. This is following up on a motion that council.
Point of
Yeah.
privilege.
See it.
Sorry, I think Ms. Walls may have had something to interject related to the.
Yes, through the chair, if I could just get clarity on that last motion, were you wanting it brought back after the after you just see the procedure bylaw or once it's adopted? Because there's some time in between those two.
The intention was after we see it next, because I think because it's a bylaw requires so many adoption meetings. So it was like once we have a really good sense of what it will be.
First reading?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ms. EAO, go ahead.
Through the chair, and I'd like to thank Ms. Walls for her efforts in bringing both of these things forward. So you'll notice that you directed staff back in 2023, December, to come back to you with recommendations on mayor and council remuneration for 2024 to 2028 without using an independent professional. I think it's been acknowledged that we have been a bit thin on the ground with certain staff. So Ms. Walls and our HR team and others have done their best to put together some items for your consideration that include a comparison of municipalities. The question, of course, being asked is why these municipalities? We are a very unique peninsula city. So what we've got is some comparables that look at not only population size, but also communities that are former mill towns or resource towns that have had some challenges. So these are the ones that we've picked. We can do something different if you like, but at least gives you some comparables in terms of mayor and council remuneration. And then we also have some information there for your consideration around benefits and how that fits into remuneration for council. So Ms. Walls, if you would like to speak further to the details in here, this would be a good time, or council may wish to just go to questions. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you, CAO. You pretty much covered it. Yeah, staff are just looking for direction on kind of those four items there with regard to salary, benefits, travel reimbursement, and provisions for breaches of code of conduct, which of course you don't have yet. Again, for a timeline update, hoping to have that to you at the next round of meetings this month. But having it's a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario where do you have the policy first or the bylaw first when they both reference each other? So having the provision in the remuneration bylaw would stand regardless of the content of the code of conduct. So it was determined we could bring this one first. So yeah, just looking for your direction and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Palm.
Yeah, I'm going to start the discussion. I'm not going to refer to any motion here, but when we took a look at remuneration back in, I think it was the summer sometime, council decided to defer this to a future discussion, which is, I guess, to this evening. And when I look at the numbers on the comparison of various communities, and I look at a couple close to us, such as Parksville, Comox, I see we're in the range that's very similar. And this talks about benefits, and I think we're in the right place at this current time, considering all that we have going on in our city in terms of our financial position. And we shouldn't waste any more time, in my opinion, on this, because as the numbers outline here, we're within acceptable ranges, and we don't have to bother staff with any further work in this regard, because we are compensated a little above other communities of a similar size, and we do not need to increase our compensation by adding benefits to the package or anything of that sort. So that's where I sit. I just want to express that for further consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Dope.
And I'm pretty much aligned with Councillor Palm on this one. I think our compensation for public or for elected representatives is reasonable right now. I'm not hearing a lot of people saying it needs to be improved. I think if we're going to do that, probably the best time for us to do it would be towards the end of 2026. There will be a new election coming. Could be one of the last decisions the existing council makes. So the decisions would actually affect the pay of new people coming in rather than the people who are sitting there making the decisions. I've always thought it's a difficult thing to do, to make an unbiased, unconflicting decision on your own wages, but it's what the provincial government has decided they want councils to do. It's been done a whole bunch of ways in different places. One of my first connections with civic politics was when I was at a job in Kelowna, and I was invited to be on a committee of myself and a business person and a nonprofit participating in the community. And we interviewed the mayor and the councillors and the staff, and we came back with a report and a recommendation to the Kelowna Council on what the pay should be for those people. And I think the council of that day was quite happy that they could say, well, here's a group of interested people who worked on it and suggest that this is what our wages should be. We might want to think about something like that when we're getting closer to 2026. I think the current status is good enough. It's what we all came in on, what we all knew would be the pay when we were doing it. I don't think we need to change the expenses for elected representatives. I think that it seems to be working right now, that if we don't send everybody to FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, we may send one or two people. It costs a lot of money to go there, and the format is different than AVICC or UBCM, where there aren't a lot of resolutions that are talked about. So you can attend virtually, or you can attend and come back with a report on what people did. So I don't think we need a lot of changes. The benefits is a whole other question, so I don't know everybody's situation with benefits. I actually have my own benefit plan, that my family participates in. It doesn't cost me anything particularly out of my pocket to have that benefit plan. It's part of the pensions that we receive, and other people might be in different situations. But if we're going to decide that we want to set aside money for benefits, maybe it should be that we'll pay for the benefits for some people, or we'll reimburse those who pay other ways for their benefit plans through pension plans or other things that they already pay for themselves. And I know that can get into some complications if you're getting a benefit plan for a period of time and that comes to an end and you have to replace those benefits. That's not always easy to do. I think we want to be really cautious about that, but frankly, unless I hear some real serious arguments from people that say we have to have greater pay or greater expenses, I don't see the need for it.
Councillor Southcott.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was thinking about benefits as well, because I also have benefits attached to a pension. It was an option for me, but not everybody does. And it's one thing that has been discussed around this table in past years, and that is not having something like that. And also the wage scale or the compensation scale makes a difference to who you get at a table like this, because it makes a difference to who can actually afford to sit at a table like this. And if you have a pension, you probably can sit at a table like this and you have benefits. So what I would love to see is it be at individual discretion, but I don't know how that would work exactly. Like, people who need it can have it, but people who don't, no. Otherwise, I support Councillor Dout's idea of considering somebody external. The reason why this is for like the committee that you were on, the reason why this is coming back to us now is because the previous council aimed it for exactly midterm of this council, deliberately, so that it would be uncomplicated by either just having been elected or just going into an election. That was the conversation I remember back then. But I think there's something to be said for a council doing this work not long before an election. And that's, I very much value our ability to attend ABICC and UBCM. And I think it is wise for at least one of us, virtually definitely as a way of attending FCM, but to keep a connection to the federal, what's going on federally is still relevant to us, even though provincially is extremely relevant. We have received six-figure checks thanks to the time that we've spent at those conferences. And so you can't underestimate the value. It's mostly influence, but it's extremely painful, the amount that we have to pay for hotels. Everything else probably pretty reasonable, but or expectable. Anyway, that's my thoughts with regard to that. I don't know if the question with regard to benefits can be answered. It definitely is something that can be the amounts and who that lets in the door, something that can be thought about and debated without resolution. And that's the way it's been around this table in past years. That's enough for me. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I noticed that part of the bylaw also talks about travel reimbursement and seems to set numbers in stone for that. And I know that it was based on some standard of the day for what was being paid to government employees under something, and I can't remember what it was. But I wondered if maybe that has to be part of that bylaw, or if it could not be, instead attached to some separate thing that flexes and changes automatically with whatever the appropriate rates are for travel for management staff or whoever. So that we're in alignment with the same rates as others within the organization get reimbursed on travel. And that's because, gas goes up and down, and we wouldn't necessarily want the travel reimbursements to be different than other staff members, whatever those may be. So that was just a question.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, and I will lean on Ms. Walls and Ms. Emery. My understanding right now is what the remuneration is a ceiling, but you're still reimbursed at the same rates that exempt staff are for meal per diems and mileage. Those still apply, but what you're doing is you have a ceiling around how much you expend on conferences, basically a limit on what that is collectively as a council.
So I just was reading out of the council remuneration and reimbursement bylaw. The reimbursements were set in stone within that bylaw. And so I was questioning whether those should require adjustment, even if we weren't adjusting anything else, to be on par with whatever today's rates are. Okay. And so my question was, that seems kind of onerous to try and change a bylaw every time that happens. Is there a better way to do that? Like to refer in our bylaw to something that...
Through the chair, my apologies, Councillor Elliott, absolutely there is, and it can refer to the exempt policy that has those pieces. I don't know if Ms. Walls or Ms. Denniston can speak to that, but it is possible for the bylaw to refer to
some other document.
Yes, and I see Ms. Walls jumping in to help us. Thank you.
Through the chair, the per diems for mayor and council, is it the, sorry, Councillor Elliott, is it the per diems and mileage expenses that you're referring to?
Exactly, yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, they are in line with staff. We can have that reference. I don't even think it's in a policy. It's just set by finance each year. So I think the staff reimbursement is actually a bit lower than councils, because councils is set by this bylaw, whereas staff's isn't set by a bylaw. The staff's intention is also to as we get direction from council on where they want to go with each of these items, to have the bylaw just be regarding remuneration, and have travel reimbursements set in policy so that changes can be made more easier than through bylaw. That's I'm finding that's typically the practice in a lot of other municipalities. So that would be the intention moving forward as well. Thank you.
Yes, that was exactly what I was referring to. Thank you, Ms. Walls. And then my next comments have to do with what I think about benefits and so forth. I think it's expensive to provide benefits to such a small group of people, but I do see the merits in having benefits. The proposal that it come out of the councillors' remuneration kind of slants. So folks who really might need those benefits would be maybe folks with families that don't have pensions, that don't have benefits through anything else. They also might really need their remuneration. And so it kind of disadvantages people who are less privileged to have it that way. So I think if we are going to decide about benefits, we should make sure that it is fully covered, separate from the remuneration. I don't want to tie those, because the whole point of providing benefits is to help people who may really need them in order to be able to be an elected official, and try to equalize that playing field and not make it so that only privileged people can be city councillors. So is kind of the concept behind that. I don't think we need increased remuneration at this time, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of time to think about this benefits, because now that I know what it costs, I just trying to think about that a little bit before I come down on opinion. But if you make me make an opinion right away, I guess I'll come up with one, but I'd rather have some time to think about it. So that's my thoughts on that.
Through the chair, I thought I might clarify that what we have confirmed with our benefits provider is that whether you pay separately or it's included in your reimbursement, it's not a standalone plan for council. You get added to our package. And so you're able to, the collective rate, it's not like a blended just for you exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought if that's helpful. Thank you.
And currently that's about $5,000 per person per year?
Through the chair, that's what we have here. I also have some information regarding if you do a package where it's not to the extent of what staff get, you could have a lower cost. What I don't have though yet from staff is what those lesser benefits would be compared to the full package that staff get. So what you've got here is parity with what staff get. Ms. Walls, would you like to add some more details? Thanks.
Sure, thank you through the chair. I think the big piece that determines there's a few variables based on individuals' needs that can determine the rate. The 5,000 is at the highest end, so that's the amount we're giving you. It could be lower. The big piece that you could choose to eliminate would be the dental. So there's the medical, the dental, and the life insurance. The life insurance is a pretty nominal amount. I don't have the exact amount on hand right now, but it's the dental that's a larger chunk. So if you maybe just wanted the medical and life insurance, or there's options there too. and speaking to what the CAO was mentioning. And then the other option is also to have council could make a motion to have benefits available for members of council to sign up for but pay for individually. So that could still be a different kind of option available to you. Thank you.
Through the chair,
Right to you.
okay. Through the chair, council, you may wish to digest this more. And one of the other things we can do is provide you with a summary package about what a standalone plan would look like that's distinct for you versus wrapping into what staff get, and maybe a table comparison so you can see that alongside a difference in costs. And that might give you a little bit more to consider, and then you can defer this decision. Thank you.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Lots of opinions on this, but also need some time to digest. I think, you know, I echo Councillor Southcott's opinion or views that it's really important that being on council, a wide variety of people have the financial ability to be on council. So council members should not have to rely on a pension or independent wealth in order to afford to be on council. I know for myself and perhaps others who are still working that it costs me to be on council because I can't make as much money from my other business. And so it costs me to be here. And I do it willingly in the sense that I knew what the salary was coming into it and I knew I'd be able to make it work. But there's a lot of people who could not make this work because they would have to either resign from an existing job or reduce hours at an existing job to a point where maybe they no longer are eligible for benefits. And so I think in order to make council attractive for a wide range of members of our community, it is important to seriously consider benefits and not in an opt-in and it costs more for individuals. It's just available to all and people can opt out so the city doesn't have to pay for it, but it shouldn't impact council remuneration by taking part in a benefits plan. I am totally okay with not increasing remuneration for the duration of this term in the sense that I knew what it was coming into it. But I do appreciate what the previous council did in terms of making the value higher for the next term. And so not only with remuneration, a conversation that I've had with a number of councillors from other communities is also talking about childcare expenses when it comes to remuneration, because it costs more for parents, especially single parents, to be on council because if they have children under a certain age, they have to find support in order to attend council meetings, often at last minute. And some people can rely on family members and friends, but many cannot. And so, again, well, I don't have children, so it doesn't impact me, but what other communities have done has added opportunities for childcare reimbursement to future councils so that people who are deciding whether or not they can make it work to run for council know what they're getting into. And again, I knew what I was getting into and I want to make it more attractive for a wider diversity of members of our community to participate. So I would, while I think deferring the remuneration decision to later on in the term might make sense, we're still going to be left with a decision and it's always easier to make no decision. And so I would rather hash it out now, maybe not right at this meeting in terms of referring it to a future committee of the whole and think on it and then perhaps hold the line on remuneration until 2026 and then give it a bump so that future councils don't have to make that awkward decision in their first year on council. But those who want to decide to run for council know what they're getting into and it's a bit more attractive for more diverse folks. I'm generally okay with the travel expense the way that it is currently. One thing though that I think the regional district does that might make sense for us to do is to actually make some concrete decisions on how many people or who is approved to go to different sessions. So I think it actually is very valuable for all of us to go to UBCM, but maybe only 5 of us go to ABICC, and maybe we approve 1 or 2 of us to go to FCM, so that we can reduce expenses a little bit and keep it within the current bounds. But in terms of overall, the travel reimbursement, I think it generally makes sense. The way that it currently exists, I can afford within the current policy to go to ABICC, to UBCM, and usually 1 other in conference or conference in person, and then perhaps a couple of online seminars. All that to be said, though, if there's a valuable conference coming up and only 1 council can attend, and they've already gone through their budget, but council wants them to attend it, I think it's helpful to have that flexibility. So my understanding is we have an allowance per councillor that we're trying to, I think we all in our heads are trying to stay within. But I think if we look at the travel expenses as an overall bucket, there should be opportunities for council to say, like, yes, for example, that Forest Industries Conference in Prince George next year, like, we are willing to prioritize that as a council and not ding an individual councillor for attending that kind of on behalf of our council. So those are some of my views on it. I would like to make a decision this year so that it's done and future applicants or candidates for council know what they're getting into. I'm okay with holding the line on remuneration, but I would like a bump in the last year so that the next council knows what they're going into. I do like a couple of communities had, in terms of how they increase automatically salary over time. There were some that tied it to CPI, but had a min and a max. I kind of liked that, so that, you know, we had some couple of the consumer price index during COVID where it was huge. It was, you know, say 7%, and I think having a maximum makes it things tied a little bit tighter. And then my final comment is, you know, there are some communities who, like, for example, Victoria, they voted to increase their salary. I mean, unsurprisingly, there was pushback from the greater community. And so they decided to have a committee, you know, review and make recommendations. And so they did that. And then there was backlash on who got appointed to that committee. And so, like, who decides is the question. And so I don't necessarily think, like, honestly, I think if a number of residents really dug into the work that council does and what the job is like, and comparing it to other jobs in the community, I think many would recommend an increase above and beyond what council would be interested in increasing. So I think it adds a layer of complexity that I don't think we need. And I think those were the 4 items. We got benefits, travel expenses. Yeah, I wanted to throw in childcare and remuneration. Was there a 4th thing that I'm missing? Anyways, I've spoken enough. I spoke for quite a while there. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson. I've got a list of councillors looking for second round, so I will say a couple words in the meantime. As we first heard from all of our councillors who are in a position of working most of their career and the benefits of being retired, I'm on the flip side of my career path. And 2 years ago, when I sat in the gallery looking at a council meeting for the first time, I noticed a demographic of council that didn't adequately represent the population of our community. In terms of, I knew there was a lot of young families that were coming to town that had young kids, and no disrespect to any of the council members, it wasn't something that most of the council members had. So but one of the challenges I had at the time, and that I hummed and hawed about for several weeks, was, can I make this work as the sole provider of a family of 5? And to balance it out, knowing what the income level was and what the time commitment might be. Now, I was maybe we'll call it crazy enough to say, well, why not? Let's give it a shot, because first you got to get elected and then you figure out the rest from there. some people might not necessarily be willing to take that chance on a risk and need to have a little bit more security. I was fortunate to get in, and I was fortunate to find alternate employment or several different sources of income to make the balance work, and a partner and homemaker who can handle a lot of other areas of my life. Not everyone's got that opportunity. I was actually surprised, though, coming into council, that benefits weren't on the table for council members. I was surprised that staff of the city get benefits within the city, not just health and wellness benefits, but parks and recreation benefits that council doesn't get as well. And I think those are some small additions that can make the role a little bit more appealing for those who are interested in applying, and open up our pool of potential candidates to run for council. So as several councillors have said, it becomes an option for more people, and we get a more diverse council. One thing about our previous bylaw that was done was our previous council did do a good job of setting a bylaw up that lasted over 5 years. That bylaw, though, ended 1 year into the term for our term. So while it did last 5 years, they actually made their decision for majority of their term and a little bit of the new term, and basically left 3 years of our term for us to decide on our own. So I appreciate the effort staff has done into putting this report together. I think that at a minimum, we should have something that goes at least halfway into the new term of the next council, so that they don't just have 1 year to get under their belt, but they've got a couple years that they don't have to worry about it and decide. And the proper adjustments are there, whether it's CPI, whether it's inflation, or whether it's an arbitrary amount that we feel is fair, or whether it's just, hey, we're adding some optional benefits that get included as an appreciation for your time on council. I think that would make sense. Other councils, and I know Councillor Isaacson has mentioned this in the past, have also instituted maternity policies, so that should there be a councillor that happens to have a child while in their term, there's options and set out already that gives them that flexibility beyond just a virtual presence at a meeting. At UBCM, we all saw, I think, 2 or maybe 3 mothers that had their infant childs. Well, I was actually amazed that all of them were well behaved too. Didn't hear a thing. In fact, one of them from Powell River is actually our future MP candidate in the next federal election. So that might be something else to consider, whether it's under remuneration or a separate maternity policy as well. So those are my thoughts on there. I have 3 others in the order here. So I've got Councillor Southcott, then Elliott, and then Councillor Doe.
Everything's been covered except for one thing, and that is that I would hope that we could include benefits, and I would support that on the condition that there was an opt-out clause so that I could opt out. I'm not going to need maternity benefit. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Elliott.
I really appreciate some of these other items that are not part of the report coming up. And I wanted to share some of my experiences when I first was elected in 2018 as a single mother of 2 children that required childcare at that time. It was quite a shock to me to find out how much it was going to cost me to pay childcare in order to make it to meetings and carry out my duties, that was not actually an expense that I was allowed to be reimbursed. So those are the kinds of things that we don't really talk a lot about for people coming in. When you hear that you're going to be able to have your legitimate expenses reimbursed, you think that's the case, and it really isn't. And I was a single mother at the time, and it was quite a hardship. I have to tell you, it was hard. The idea that you could just virtually tend with a bunch of loud children at home instead of paying for childcare is completely false. It's not possible to do that, just so you all know. So I would be totally in favor of having, if not part of this policy, some other policy for expenses that are reimbursed separate, like whether it's part of remuneration or part of a benefits package policy for council. I think we do need to provide staff with direction to come back with a little more detail on some of the options for benefits and what those finances would be. And I do agree that we should bring in a remuneration bylaw that does cover off at least part of the next term and make this, because coming in brand new it's not a question you should be left with immediately. It's not it should have, some time before you have to consider that. And it also helps us with our 5-year financial planning when you're transitioning between elections to have some things sorted out ahead of time for everybody. So every council can make the transition from one council to the other easier by having some things that don't have to get decided immediately upon change of government. So those are my thoughts, that we probably should make a recommendation to staff to bring us a draft bylaw on remuneration, and whether we want to base that on status quo up to the end of our term and then a CPI for the next or what have you. We could definitely try to come up to some conclusion as a council as to what we want to do with that. I think I'm in support of something that maintains what we have and provides some other kind of arrangement for the next council, so that we are being fair to the next council. And then the concept of maternity is one that is probably needs to have a policy as well. I agree with that. Because if you are a woman having a baby and you are on council, the uncertainty of having no policy is it's difficult, because you don't know what you can or can't do or what happens in that regard. It's not simply a medical leave, it's some other things. If we're getting down to which kinds of benefits you could or could not, and whether you can opt out or in, I want to just make sure that I'm not in favor of folks who might need those benefits to have to pay out of their remuneration for that. So I would want folks who need those benefits to be able to access them and not have to pay for it out of their remuneration as an equity attempt. I like the idea of being able to opt out if you don't need them, because lots of folks may not need them, and that's a benefit to the city to be able to opt out. So I think we need to make some direction to staff for how we want to proceed tonight, as far as coming back with more details around benefits, separating out our benefits from our remuneration, and bringing back a draft bylaw that is maybe status quo to the end of our term, and then a CPI for the next one, or whatever it is we want to decide. And so those are what I think we should be doing here tonight.
So no.
And I think I made my position pretty clear at the beginning. I'd be quite happy to not do anything about a staff remuneration bylaw or council remuneration bylaw to change anything. I'd be quite satisfied with that. Be quite satisfied with doing the same thing in 2025, and in 2026, council getting together and by some method come up with a proposal for a staff remuneration bylaw that would take place around November 2026, where there would be a brand new council. I'm totally in favor of that. I want to point out that Councillor Southcott, who has a pension and gets benefits from that pension, and me, who has a pension and gets benefits, maybe Councillor Palm does, maybe others do, don't get those benefits free. They're paid for by being part of the pension. They're paid for by deductions from pension checks. We do work. As a council member, I do work. Maybe I'm in an older demographic than some, but we do work, and benefits that we have cost money. I have always been in favor of equitable compensation. If council wants to pay benefits, then that benefit should be arranged so that people who are already paying for the benefit get reimbursed for the benefit, the cost of the benefits they have. Not too complicated a thing compared to all the other complicated things we're talking about. But I would like it if somebody made a motion, we made a decision about where we're going to go. The recommendation in the package won't cut it. Somebody's going to have to sit down and write a motion that says what they want to do in specifics. And then we could go forward, because we've been here for almost 4 hours sitting in these nice comfy seats now, and I'd like to get on with it and do something if we're going to.
So Pawd, then Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chairman. To make my comments very, very brief based on what I've heard various councillors, and that is, when you sign up for this job, it's a service to the community. That's why you're here. It's not about the compensation. We all get into this business knowing that. Keep that foremost in your mind. Where we are financially right now as a city is a concern. I think I stated that already. Councillor Dowd has come up with a good idea to defer this until 26. I totally concur with him. And if you're going to go down, as you've all stated, remuneration is fine. Travel expenses, I've been traveling for 16 years now. When I get compensated for my travel, I submit my ferry fare. I get so much per mile or kilometer, and I've always been very fairly compensated. So in terms of those two items, no problem. In terms of the benefits, we can solve that right now. And that is other communities that have accepted to pay benefits have councillors pay out of the remuneration. If you want benefits, as Councillor Dowd says, I have a pension, I pay for them. Simple as that. And then that doesn't go right across the board, and it doesn't cost the city any further. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Councillor Isaacson.
Move on.
Yeah.
Councillor Isaacson.
I'm going to move to refer this item. I was going to say to the next committee of the whole meeting, but I don't know how packed it is. I just want a bit more time to digest it, and I'd be willing to prepare a motion, but I wanted to hear what the discussion was around the table before I did so, and I'm not ready to make a motion right now. And so I'm looking to our Deputy Corporate Officer Walls and CAO Bopel saying in terms of how packed things are and whether, I mean, basically referring the item as is, so no additional work would be done, but what other conversations are happening at the next couple committee of the wholes, and what would be a good date to refer this to?
Through the chair, Ms. Walls, I think we do have a fair bit, but December 3rd would be your next one if we didn't go to the last one in November, which is the 19th. The 19th. So the other piece is through the chair to all of you. I think we can provide you with a chart that shows you what the benefits would include with a lesser model standalone for council versus the equivalent of what staff get. And I think that would give council more informed decision making. So I do think we need to give you a little bit extra information based on some of your questions today. So I'd like to propose December 3rd. I don't know, Ms. Denniston, if this has any major impacts as we're looking at budget considerations. That was one of the reasons for us trying to get it in front of you, was so that we had that. But I think we can work with that. And I think that gives you a fair bit of time, allows us to give you some of the comparables that I think help inform your decisions. Thank you.
So given that, I will move to refer this. Oh, I see CFO Denniston had their hand up. No, it's down. Okay. So I move to refer this item to the December 3rd Committee of the Whole. And I have some additions to clarify what additional information we might want. So whoever needs to write this down. And staff include more details about benefits options. That's one. Two, an example policy of parental leave from another community. So I can speak to my motion in a second. And third, a sample childcare reimbursement policy from another community.
Southcott.
So just a bit of information about why I've made this motion. One, I think I would like to decide this, and even if we're deciding to, for example, not do anything until 2026, I'd like to decide that now, because honestly, when 2026 comes, it is so much more easy to not make a decision and pass the buck to the next council, and I would like to get it out of the way. But I would like a bit more time, given the conversation we've had tonight, to prepare some motions that might be amenable to the majority of council. And that additional information, it sounds like there's curiosity around benefits, and so adding a bit more information for us would be helpful. And then I don't want an analysis on parental leave and childcare or even elder care policies, but if there are other communities that have them, finding one and including an example, just so that we know what it looks like and whether or not to include that in requesting staff to include those items in a draft bylaw. So those are my reasons for making the motions as I did.
Councillor Elliott.
So the motion was seconded?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm okay with the motion. I did have some draft motions here to move forward with that I would also be okay with, but if we defer, wait past this motion, then we're kind of done this conversation and we're moving along. I'm in favor of holding the line on remuneration and then doing some boosts for the future council for 2 years, just so people know. I also want to see the benefits options more clearly before making a decision on that, but I do want to delay the decision for years into the future. I'd like to make that decision fairly forthwith. I'm okay with I had something to say and it left my head. I'm okay with this motion if that's what council wants, but I do want to move it along fairly quickly and get to the point where we make a decision. I'm not okay with just making no decisions all the time. That is not what we're here for. So we're here to set up things for the next few years. Oh, and I wanted to make the point, currently we are operating without a bylaw, as the last one was expired, is that correct? Or was it just extended? Or
through the chair, I'll confirm my belief, Ms. Walls, is that it was carried forward in the absence of a new one.
But did we pass a new bylaw or did we just make a motion?
Through the chair, we made a motion to carry on with the existing one. Ms. Walls, could you confirm for me, please? I believe I'm correct, but I want to check.
Through the chair, yes, it was. There wasn't a new bylaw made. It was a motion to just continue with the status quo for 2024 and then reevaluate this year for the new term. So if the option on December 3rd is to not make any changes, we would still need a motion to then not make any changes. And what exactly that would look like, whether it's a CPI increase, 2% increase, or no increase at all. Thank you.
So the bylaw talked about various increases at different years. It didn't actually expire though, is that correct?
Through the chair, the bylaw, I mean, it didn't expire, but it didn't go past 2023. So it's still active, but there's just no provisions for anything further than 2023.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I will call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Councillor Palmer opposed. The motion passes.
Could we have a 5-minute?
I was just gonna, we only have, well, my question actually was because we only have engagement reports and questions. So one option would be to, yep. So if you don't mind, Councillor Palm, I'll start with you on the engagement reports. And okay, Councillor Elliott.
I took the time to write a few things, so I guess I will go back to those. I attended the Chamber of Commerce Board meeting on October 15th, where they reported out successes on their Blackberry Fest and how their memberships were up, and their revenues has also gone slightly up over the previous years. And they are still looking actively for new members, and would really hope that people who are within the business community would join the Chamber of Commerce. And they did talk a little bit about the planning for the next gala come the spring. The timing in February never works for the president, so they're considering whether to move it to a later date like they did last year. I've also, as a member of the regional district, belonged to the Vancouver Island Coastal Community Committee on Solid Waste and Circular Economy. And on October 23rd, I did attend that meeting, and we discussed much of the the area-wide concerns with that. I brought forward the problems we're having with our institutional, commercial, and industrial recycling not being allowed into the Recycle BC, which has caused problems for our entire community because those recycling products are now have nowhere where they can go and are going into landfill. And so that is our apartments that are handled by business pickup, our businesses, our institutions, our schools, all of those, all of that stream of recycling, which is mainly paper, cardboard, that kind of stuff, currently is not allowed into the BC Recycle stream. And we do not have a commercial option, like a business or market option for that here due to our isolation. It's extremely difficult to tie into other market type things, and the scale isn't big enough to create our own. And so that has gone on to a list, which the committee made a motion to ask the chair and vice chair to provide advocacy on behalf of the whole committee in all of our areas to ask the province to reverse that decision, which was in effect for our area in July. And you might have seen some media coverage on the fact that people have nowhere to take their recycling. And so there's only residential recycling happening now, none of the what they're calling the ICI. And that's a huge problem for our area, and it's going to really increase our landfill garbage, which is crazy and counterproductive. And so we've made a motion to advocate on behalf of us and other folks who are equally remote to have Recycle BC take that back into their stream. And we're hoping that moves along. So I hope that made sense. I attended the community action team on whatever day that was, last Monday. Like not last Monday yesterday, but last Monday, but last week. And Dr. Modi Kakatla was there, who's our public health officer. And she said it was a very cautionary thing, but she thought that deaths were trending down this year over last year, because last year was not a good year for our Vancouver Coastal Health and our town community, qathet. But she was a little bit cautious on that because not all the data's in, and she said it seems to be trending down, but that could change between now and the end of the year depending on what happens, because it's not trending down in such a significant way that she can definitively say. She reported out on a lot of other statistics, which I will get an email later with all of that in it. And it was very difficult to remember off the top of my head, but the trending down was the good part. We were also trending down in 911 calls, trending down in some other areas. So things are better this year than last year, when it comes to the overdose statistics for our community. I attended on November 2nd the School District 47 YMCA childcare opening ceremony over at Edgehill. There's 54 new spaces opening in qathet, some at Edgehill Elementary School and some out at Kelly Creek. And they're going to be operated by the YMCA, and the YMCA's first time they've operated childcare facilities in our area, although they've done them in other larger communities. So we welcome YMCA. The 54 new spots for 0 to 5 year age children is super welcome by all of the people who need that. It's been a long time coming, and I'm very excited about that. I attended Nahom, traditional Kla'aman naming ceremony on November 2nd, right after that. And it was my first time at a Kla'aman naming ceremony. They take all day. There's a lot that goes on. They also had the masks that were just carved and unveiled along with the dances and the sharing. And it was a really nice to witness that kind of cultural ceremony. And you could tell that they were trying really hard to make it flow really easy, and yet they were a little bit out of practice. But I really appreciated all of the music, the songs, and they had songs from all of the visiting communities that were also there, and it was really nice. I really appreciated that invitation. Thank you.
Attended a Canadian Federation of Independent Business presentation and got to chat with the guy who presented that at a chamber lunch. It really opened my eyes to that organization provides a lot more than I thought it did for small business. So the local division of it is in Courtney Comoxt. Also, CAT team meeting. I was really glad to see a slightly broader conversation going on at that than has been recently. There are more concerns, and they were being entertained there, which in this community, and they were being entertained there, which I was really glad to see. A couple of AGMs, one for the Land Conservancy, and also for the Yacht Club. A very interesting webinar put on by the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, which is a very interesting organization I had no idea existed, sort of exists somewhere between CSIS and RCMP, but really targets services to institutions of local government. And I think senior governments as well, but pretty amazing insights by the presenters. RCMP had the second half of that in the morning presentation. And I just received a PowerPoint deck, so I'll send those. I haven't had a chance to look at it in email, but if it's interesting, I'll send it out to everybody. And I also attended the Noham at Kla'aman. They're rusty because they haven't done something like that for many decades here. So it's again recreating culture, and it was fascinating, and I felt very honored to be invited to that. It was amazing. Yeah, that's me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Southcott. Councillor Dope.
Yeah, and I'm just going to keep it as short. I also was honored to be invited to the home ceremony, which is, a Lamon family had brought their relatives from everywhere from Port Alberni to Williams Lake and Lillooet, Prince George, Squamish, south part of the peninsula, and they were receiving names. And as Councillor Southcott said, this hasn't happened in the era of the residential schools. It's a remembrance from the grandmothers and the grandfathers and the stories they heard of how to do that, and presenting ancestral names to members of the family, from adults to little kids who were falling asleep during the ceremony. But it was moving. The artistic presentations, the singing and the dancing that was going on, and the parading of the masks and all of the ceremonies were something to see. And I saw that as a declaration by one family in the Tla'amin people that they are still here, and their culture is still here, and it's getting stronger. And it was something to see. I brought home a bag of gifts. I think everybody who was there did. Value probably under $250 for all those people who like to keep notes on what I'm doing. But, you know, it was an honor to be given small gifts by people who appreciated the guests being there as witnesses, because that's what these ceremonies are about. It's people from the community witnessing name-giving ceremonies and mask presentations happening, so everybody in the community didn't know that they happen. It was an incredible experience. I'm glad I attended, and I'm glad to see that they're reclaiming their culture in the way that they are, in a very honest and straightforward and informal way.
Sir Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Also attended the childcare opening. Lots of kiddos there, and it was great to see them using the space as everybody got to go inside and check it out. And so my understanding is all of the staff are already in place, and the facility by Edge Hill should be opening soon. I think there's just a couple of little notes to check off, and maybe Councillor Almeida has more information on that. I also attended, not the whole day of the Noham ceremony, but a lot of the day. I'm still, COVID a couple weeks ago just knocked me out, and so still dealing with energy. So I was there for a couple of hours and got to hear the speeches from a number of Tla'amin elders and residents and members about the importance of naming and why we give traditional names, and the importance of upholding them and representing the name in a good way, because often they are, you know, coming from ancestors, grandparents, great-grandparents, and some people's ancestral or traditional names are after places or about qualities that they hold, and the family wants them to uphold. So great, and the masks were stunning and lovely. I was only there for the lunch, but brought a potato salad and it was gone by the time I got to it. But it was fantastic, and I really appreciate Sidney and Sherman for extending the invitation to all of council. And it wasn't an intergovernmental thing; it was just a cultural exchange, and as Councillor Douts had an opportunity to witness the strength of culture among Tla'amin people. I attended the inaugural meeting of the Anchor Table. It was one of the days where I was well enough to attend virtually, but Councillor Southcott as my alternate was there just in case. And so I want to keep spreading the word about the Anchor Table. Oh, no, sorry, not Anchor Table. What am I saying? Not Anchor Table. The Foundry. Why did I say Anchor Table? Yeah. Foundry kickoff meeting. What did I say? Anyways, so if you hear about Foundry, Foundry is an integrated, physical space offering integrated health for youth ages 12 to 24. So that's mental health, support around substance use, physical and sexual health, youth and family peer support, social services. So if the idea is if a youth is struggling, there is a place to go. And sometimes that might mean referrals, but sometimes that means a number of agencies either operating under one roof or connected to that roof. And it is, I think, in many other communities, truly a lifesaver for young people. And so we talked about, you know, what should people feel and youth feel when they come into the building, and what should they feel or think when they leave. And so I think there's a goal of it being a very welcoming place where people have options, where they feel supported, and there's clarity about what comes next. And so a really fantastic group representing provincial government, Tla'amin Health, and a number of important agencies around town. So a couple of updates on that. they're hoping to launch roughly in 2 years. And so if it's 2 years from now, you might anticipate it might not be a new build. But I think further announcements will be made about that. But they're hoping to launch within 2 years. And I think that's all I can share at this point. But that was really exciting. That's Youth and Family Services who's leading that. And then just two random things that I, attended as an individual, not as a representative council, that just highlight the diversity of experiences and opportunities for involvement for such a wide range of people. So I often attend garden club meetings, and there's often, 50 to 100 people there. We learn something, we share food, have a good time. And then also attended the Vampire Masquerade put on by Qathet Pride. And again, maybe 100, 150 people having a great time, coming around shared values and interests. There was definitely more costumes at the Masquerade than there were at Garden Club, but I love how in this community, because we are isolated, we have to make our own fun. And there's just so many little pockets of things for people to get involved with and attend and to connect with other people at. So just shout out to the Garden Club and Qathet Pride for hosting some fantastic events in the community.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson. And it's been a busy couple of weeks. I also had a chance to attend the Chamber CFIB lunch where Councillor Southcott was, more in my day job capacity, but still good and informative. My time as acting mayor kicked off on Friday, and Saturday I filled in for the mayor at the YMCA childcare opening, and I believe they're scheduled to open a week from today, actually, right after Remembrance Day, and the 20, I believe it's 28 or 24 spots that are in the Edge Hill area are completely, will be filled up, and then the Kelly Creek location is still in construction and scheduled to open some point later on this year, I think. But good looking facility overall, and glad to have that team and the YMCA part of our community. We already saw today the ElderDog delegation that came. I had a chance to attend the Health and Wellness Fair put on by our staff a couple Saturdays ago now, and that was a great turnout. The Pickleball Association was there. VCH was out giving some flu shots for those that wanted. There was a few people teaching some basics of first aid, or I did see some first aid practice dummies and things as well. So it looked like it was a well-attended event. Almost, you might say maybe was too big for the hallway at the complex. We need to find a larger space for future health and wellness fairs as well. So in a personal capacity, Diwali celebrations started last weekend and continue to this weekend. I happen to live very close to our local Gurdwara, and our family was invited to attend. It is very open, so if you are interested in learning more about a different culture, the Sikh culture is around the world is very open to inviting community in and celebrating with them. Those celebrations are continuing this weekend with another dinner and on Saturday and lunch on Sunday. So but we had a chance to kick it off on Friday as well. And then last week I had a chance, probably my most fun part of the last couple of weeks is the Heritage Christian Online School Homeschool Group does a regular community class. And with the election happening, they had received the kit. Election BC puts out a kit on just an educational kit for schools and classes to learn about elections and things. And so they had actually done a little class leader election as a mock election. They had a ballot box that Election BC had sent them, and they asked me to come in as a guest speaker for a little bit. So challenging group of kids to talk to when there's age 5 to age 12 in the same room. But they had some great questions. They had been following along with the provincial elections, knew the colors of all the parties that were there, and were curious to the results. And so it was a great little time to speak, and I wish we could do that more often with some of the classes in town. I'm sure it'd be a great way to engage our future voters into being a part of the political conversation. I got a great card that was signed by all the kids in the class, so it was definitely a fun time to talk a little politics in a very fun and casual environment. So that's all I got so far. So moving on into the agenda. We got some questions and things, so we have a few online. So I'll start with the online ones, and then we'll go from there. So, Mr. Cian, if you can tee it up.
Hello, Sherry Burton.
Is now joining.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Burton. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair and Council, for the opportunity to ask questions. It's with regards to Agenda Item 5.3. In the November 5th report on page 5, it talks about financial implications under option 1. And it states that in the 5-year financial plan bylaw, there's a regular increase of 2% annually. And I couldn't find in the bylaw that reference. And I searched the city website to find, I can only find a draft 5-year financial plan from 2024 to 2028. And I searched that reference as well in that draft, and I could not find it. So I'm looking for some guidance from staff as to where I can find this information.
It looks the CAO is grabbing the mic, so I'll pass the torch over.
Through the chair to Ms. Burton, I'm going to see, I see Ms. Denniston has her hand up through the chair, if I might allow her to speak. Are you?
Yep. Go ahead, Ms. Denniston.
Thank you through the chair. Hello, Ms. Burton. Regarding your question on the 5-year financial plan bylaw, that should be on the website. And if it isn't, I will request that that be uploaded tomorrow and a copy emailed to you so you have that handy. And then regarding your second question about whether you would be able to see what the increase for council remuneration would be in the 5-year financial plan bylaw. And the answer is you wouldn't be able to see that at that level of detail. That bylaw is required to be outlined at this, the expenses for each service. So for example, you would have administration as one service and you'd have emergency services. So you'd see the total costs per year of those services. However, the annual SOFI report does report the remuneration and expenses for mayor and council, as well as staff who earn over $75,000. So the SOFI report would be something where you could find actuals. So if that answers your question.
I am familiar with where to locate remuneration for council and expenses, and yes, staff that earn over $75,000. I'm very aware of that. But yes, in the bylaw, it does not attach the 5-year financial plan. It just does summary. And I was specifically looking to see if I could find this information about the increase. So I understand a bit better now that it's sort of melded into the whole report. Thank you, Ms. Dennison. I have one more question. It's not for Ms. Dennison, though.
Ms. Burton, I'm so sorry. I don't want to interrupt, but I hear your question a little bit more. As far as the budget reports, you would see in draft 1 and probably draft 2 that labor costs increased. The assumption was 2%. So that wouldn't be in the bylaw itself, but it is in the budget draft 1 report. So anyway, I just wanted to give that background for you as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll take a look at that later. So the rest of my question is with regards to attachment 3 to the report, and I thank Ms. Walls for updating the statistics on that. I just wanted to point out there's still a couple of errors with regards to population size based on the BC government website population estimates for Comox and Courtenay. And there are still some data that needs to be updated with regards to mayor and councillor salaries. I do find that the statement of financial information for municipalities are very thorough because they break down the remuneration and then separate from expenses. So it would be beneficial for a council, for example, Powell River, the actual mayor's salary is $80,176 as opposed to $75,000 noted on attachment 3, and as well the council salary is $30,000, not $28,000. So, I just think it's better for everybody to have the best information and the most accurate data. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Burden. And now that it's been deferred to December, the staff might tweak a few things along with the other edits that has been put through in the motion.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions online, Mr. Tian? Okay, in the gallery, anyone today with questions? Don't all rush up at once? No? No, okay. Making it easy for us. All right. Well, that I guess put it back to the end, yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn and seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? That's it. Thank you, everyone. Plenty of time to catch the Kings game tonight. Good luck.